Hi friends, your pal Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the interview that Neil Brennan did with um, Matthew McConaughey. And actually, there's so much here. So so, and I want to be fully transparent with you. 10 minutes of that interview, right? Like, it's so fascinating because so I started this podcast, and I got 10 minutes in, and I already had this video, right? I was like, I need to talk about this. So okay, so Dungeons and Dragons. I I firmly believe that Dungeons and Dragons has fundamentally changed how humanity interacts with narrative and identity, and that the people who are using Dungeons and Dragons today to explore narrative and identity are light years ahead of the rest of humanity, except on the secular side. On the secular side, if you are sacred and like you've secured, and actually you've accepted, um, and you've already handled your afterlife, you're ahead of anybody who's dealing with Dungeons and Dragons. But I have this firm belief that like there's the sacred world, and those people are taken care of, right? Like this, what you have to understand is, if you have had secured for you eternity, right? Then this 75 years barely matters. It's the dot at the beginning of the line, right? But if you don't have that, right? Your best chance on this earth is Dungeons and Dragons, because it's the only way you can access 30 other lives, 30 other worlds now, right? Like, and so I really believe that Dungeons and Dragons is for the secular world, is this incredibly transformative force of intellect, emotion, and spirit, right? I just think there's nothing like it, right? And I'm really fascinated by the concept of identity, right? And I believe that, if once and I've done it, like, my heart beats on 30 worlds, right? I have 30 sets of emotions, experiences, sensations, right? Memories, right? And it's given me an incredibly rich life, secular, which is really quite like alien to my sacred life, because I have a sacred life as well, and that's on top. I'm incredibly blessed. I have a very rich secular life because of Dungeons and Dragons, and I have an incredibly and I have an incredible life because of my sacred life. So I'm very, very blessed. Thanks for your patience with that. So Neil Brennan, all right, he wrote the Chappelle Show, okay, with Chappelle, and he's brilliant, and he has I think he has the most valuable podcast on the planet right now. The reason why is he's super intelligent, and he's independent. He doesn't have to bend the knee to anyone, right? And on this podcast he interacts with people very genuinely and very independently, and that's extremely rare. Okay, so first of all, many podcasts are not worth listening to because they don't have intelligent people on them. Then you could get really intelligent people, but the podcast still doesn't matter, right? Because the people fawn. They're not independent. They're being paid to accomplish X, Y, or Z, right? And also that a lot of times when they're interviewing, and even if they're not owned, right? Even if they're independent, but there's so much, the way people interact with celebrities is pretty incredible, right? And so one of the things I thought is that American celebrities just bowl people over. They literally slap them in the face when they want to. Like, if an American celebrity wants to slap you in the face, they'll do it in front of 1 million people, dance at a party afterwards, and nobody will show up at their door at midnight and put them in the lockup, right? Like, American celebrities just don't roll the way anybody else on the planet does, right? So Neil Brennan interviews Matthew McConaughey, right? Now, I've watched a lot of Neil Brennan's content, right? So I know how he interacts with people. One, he has a lot of his friends on. He has a lot of his, actually not even friends. He has friends on. That's one, and he interacts with friends in a different way. He had Ronnie Chiang on, I think they're genuinely friends. Like, they were very friendly together. And Bobby Lee, right? Like, there's just a friendship vibe, right? But then, like, he had Leanne, I can't remember her name. She's on a show called Leanne right now. She's like this southern blonde comedian. They're not friends, right? But they're professional colleagues. And he had a very nice demeanor with her. But it was, it was real, like, you could tell it was like a professional demeanor, right? Like a colleague demeanor, right? Then he has people like he really respects, right? And then he has people he actively dislikes that he's antagonistic toward, who are antagonistic to him. One of his most fascinating interviews was Dan Harmon, right? They hated each other. You, like, watch that podcast. They despise each other, right? Like, they don't like, and there's points where they get actively antagonistic toward one another, like, just like razor sharp tongue cuts, right? Like, it's bad, right? But this one was like nothing I'd ever seen, right? So he comes in and he's like, at the beginning he says, "You seem very set in who you are and you're not questioning it." And I was like, what the heck is that, right? And I knew, and like, I kind of spun it around in my head. I was like, oh my gosh, he's going right at him, right? And I believe what Neil Brennan was saying is, this is all an act. Your personal persona, your public persona is an act. It's not real. It's not actually you. You are never showing yourself to the public. You are projecting a persona, right? And, and with McConaughey, man, yeah, this kind of lands, right? Because within the first 10 minutes, he's like, "You're a musical talker. Do you do?" And he's like, "Do you do it on purpose?" Like he just came. I couldn't believe he came right at him, right? And I think what's interesting is I think the reason we got this interview in the way we got it was because Brennan was free to go at him, right? And the reason why is I don't think Neil Brennan said, "Hey, can we get Matthew McConaughey on here?" McConaughey just wrote a book. And I think McConaughey's people reached out to Brennan and go, "Hey, could you get McConaughey on here? We need to promote this book." And they did. They promoted the book within the first 10 minutes. Not at the end where, "Oh boy, what would you like to plug?" Like, it was in the first 10 minutes, right? So that's why McConaughey was on the show, in my humble opinion. And Brennan doesn't need the money. He's independent. He's made, I think he made 50, 100, maybe $250 million off the Chappelle show after all these years. He's still probably getting checks of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year minimum, right? Just off that one show, right? So he was free to just like go at McConaughey, but not to tear him down, but to say, "Hey, I want to talk about what I'm seeing here, man. The rest of the world is going to fawn all over you, right? The rest of the world is just going to praise you for every movie you're ever in. But I'm Neil Brennan. I don't need your money. You're on my podcast, and this is real talk, man. So let's really talk about what you're doing," right? And he was respectful, but he was also, he was pushing him a little bit, right? Like, saying, "Hey, I want to look under the hood," right? Like, "Yeah, this is a great Mustang. Pop the hood. I want to see the engine," right? Like, it was very interesting. And and so he said, but get this. So here's what okay. So he asked that question to McConaughey. You know what McConaughey said? He said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." He said, he said, "But I also realized that who I am is crafted on malapropisms, and outright lies." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I thought for 37 years that I was Little Mr. Texas." He goes, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I went to this state fair. They put me on a horse. I had my little vest and my hat. And the next day, and actually, and they gave me this, trophy. And the next day, Mom said, 'You are Little Mr. Texas,' right? And she said that to me for the rest of my life, right? And but recently, I went back home and I saw the picture and I turned it over and it said runner up." right? But for 37 years, and then he cut it off there. So for 37 years, he was telling himself, I'm Little Mr. Texas. He never, ever said to himself, I'm a runner-up, right? And he is inarguably one of the most successful men in the world. Not just in Hollywood, in the world, right? Like, he has everything, like everything a man could want, right? Like, he's had unmitigated success, right? Both commercially, critically, right? Like, he's even achieved things outside his main discipline, right? Dax Shepard was recently talking about him involved in architecture. Like, what the heck, So what I think is interesting is, so he's saying, I crafted my persona out of different things, out of projections that were given to me, out of these different areas of the world. And my entire point is that I think when we pour ourselves into these vessels we call character sheets and class boards, that when it gets poured back into us, I don't think we need to pretend anymore. We can leave what we want in the character sheet, and we can take from the character sheet what we want. We can craft who we are, exactly like Matthew McConaughey has done. Every single word you just heard in this podcast is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.